Before we get started, guys, I want you guys to know right here, I could reach up and almost touch it. Yeah. Is a hummingbird feeder, and they're the two most aggressive little
Oh,
monsters are doing it.
so aggressive. Oh
And
my
and
God.
the favorite part is like I always imagine like they're humming. It sounds like, when two lightsabers are on there. They're so cool. Since it's been
Oh,
hard for me to find the time to edit and do all these other things, I want to do it as just a live Zoom call. I think that'd be really fun. So anyone that sees this, you can just go to theyamasystem.com, and contact me. And then I'll put you guys on it, and then I'll make like a little thing of like people that want to be on the Zoom call to do the thing. And I think that would be
oh,
really
that's
fun.
fun. Yeah, feeling comfortable to do that. But it's actually kind of fun. People just start throwing questions at you. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, that's kind of fun.
Let me come clean, everybody.
Good.
And in all of my travels, the most common thing is people feel isolated. It's the stupid cliche, like social media made us less social than anything else. I feel that interacting with people is the way that we grow. And as I've been touring around and working with folks and kind of in the kind of traveling salesman for the Yama system and the 8 piece,
Yeah.
I've loved it. And the amount of people that I can interact with and change their perspective of the work that we do. Again, you know this. A lot of people used to always say one of their favorite things was to see people experience me for the first time. It's just a little off center. Like everyone knows yoga. Everyone's like, I know yoga. But when I walk in the room and teach yoga, they're like, I've never seen yoga like that. I have never seen martial arts like that. I've never seen Qigong like that. But they all know Qigong. It's the same thing with this work, with the astrology that you do and all this other stuff. And it's not a bad
Sure.
good. It's not a better worse. It's just,
Yeah.
you will not experience this work like this. And hopefully every teacher is like that. That being said, I would love to do these a little bit more live. Let's get into it. You guys know the whole deal. Go to the website and buy as much of everything as possible. There is a huge launch. It's in beta right now. So the people that got it, you got it. Those of you that were out at the Universal Consciousness Festival, I'm stoked about that. That was really cool. And I got to stay extra and do some private sessions. And I was grateful that they asked me to do that. It's pretty rare. So thank you for that. Because again, it's unique. We're going into the Rooster Moon now.
Yeah, so we're going into the second moon of autumn, which is the eighth moon. That's always the eighth moon. In particular, the configuration is a wood rooster moon, which has certain advantages and drawbacks. But essentially, what's most interesting about autumn in general is that you have this kind of period of reconsideration because we're supposed to have already been pulling back, right? We're supposed to be, the chi is shifted direction. The tide has gone out, right? So we're not pushing the chi out anymore. The chi is gathering in. So the eighth moon starts on Monday, but then the equinox starts on Tuesday. So we're like right on top of each other. You have this really big arrival of yin. So yin is as of Tuesday sort of taking over the environment, right? So up until now, it's been doing this dance, of like undermining yang because yang is just exhausted. Late summer, it's just burnt out. So you have this kind of subtle emergence of yin that is basically undermining the situation and encouraging kind of gentleness and in this direction inward. By the time you get to the equinox, which in the West we understand is the beginning of autumn, in this particular calendar, the Tongshu, the cosmology of the Tongshu, it's the middle of autumn, but it's also the point where yin is now taking charge. Like officially, it's already gotten a foothold. That's what it's been doing in this last couple of weeks of the seventh moon. It's gotten the foothold. Now it's flipping the script. So we've already should be pulling inward, but now, all those patterns of excess that we've been carrying over from late summer or just habitually, like compulsive excess, they need to be clipped, because now it's really about a harvest situation that we want to pull inward and store, like this is the time to store, but it's also the time to edit and refresh, like renew through the editing process. Like you've probably done more than you need, is the idea. So how much do you really need? And that's a big question of the eighth month. Matt,
I'm do more with less person. That's been my
that's
theme
great.
for the past 5 years.
Yeah,
Trying, not always doing it. But
totally.
can I use your words? Can I
Uh,
assume I've been doing we've been doing this for a long time.
yeah,
In
go
and
ahead.
down, people. In
In
and
and
down.
down, in and down. That's right. The two major directions, through the
Hmm.
course of the year are up and out and in and down, and so that's really that's the two major respirations of the
Hmm.
year when the chi comes up and out and then the chi gathers in and down.
Hmm.
And so we're at this process where we're gathering in, and before you can store something, you really want to you want to judge its suitability, right? So you don't, yeah. Yeah.
Can I show off all the things that I've learned from you?
Oh gosh, please.
Go, guys, in and down because it's getting autumnal.
Yeah, it's autumnal.
So
Yeah.
that's
Well,
man, that's autumnal. That's all.
well, you
I'm
can't
getting.
really the idea of like expansion and growth, isn't
Mhm.
supported by the environment, right? So you
No,
have to be
no.
conservative, in the management of in the management of your existing resources, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
there's a lot of it's assumed that there's a lot of complexity coming off the seventh moon. Things aren't quite simplified yet. We're not ready to enter into winter. Like this is the season of harvest. So we've
Okay.
been doing a lot of storage, gathering, which means kind of gathering inward. But then you have to like refine what you've stored. It's not like it's a multi-step process, is
Hmm.
generally how it's understood. And if you use agricultural metaphor, that's very clear. Like you go from one station to the next and sort of gradually refine what you have into something that you can keep, right? Through the winter time, or keep and then provide to others, right? So there is a processing, there's a transmutation that comes with this. There's a kind of refinement process that comes with the eighth moon, which is so it's incredibly important for this particular cosmology, because this cosmology, it respects the sun, but it's about the moon.
Okay.
And this particular moon, the eighth moon, is when the moon actually returns to its influence. So we've had several, yin and yang balance is not 50-50, right? That's not what it is. You know, harmony between yin and yang, if you're looking at it proportionally, is more like 80-20, mostly yin, just a little bit of yang to move it, right?
Hmm.
So when you look at the Tai Chi symbol, it's a picture of a process, not a proportion,
Hmm.
right? So that is not a proportional understanding of yin and yang at all. Like our world is mostly yin with just a little bit of yang to kind of push things around.
Hmm. Okay.
So when we've gotten to the eighth moon in this cosmology, it's a celebratory time. It's a gathering inward time. It's a recovery of grace, because not there's a process that's happening where you have to really. So there's kind of two sides to understanding the eighth moon and the rooster chi in general, which is why they call it kind of binary, right? This is a binary understanding of rooster. Is there's a kind of two sides to understand the eighth moon. The first is this kind of really ruthless, calculated, cold kind of editing process, right? Where you can't afford it, like it's a calculus. It's like it's like a really ruthless cost benefit analysis, like knowing that you're headed into winter. So there's some relationships, there's some expenditures, there's some things you just can't do anymore, right? And so in the eighth moon, we really have to be very raw, and very blunt, about that. It should have been already happening, but this is, in medieval China, this is where you kill all the prisoners,
Hmm.
right? This is where you kill the people, you execute the people who've been convicted already. No more appeals, because, we're now going inward and we need to edit out all those things that are excessive. There's a critical aspect,
Okay.
to the eighth moon. It's very critical, like where it's, I can't, I'm not gonna, you know, if you've got a relationship that's kind of been on the rocks, this is the time to cut it out, right? Like this is
Mm.
the time to like, do I really want this person? Do I want to take this person into the winter with me, right? Or how much I need to assess very precisely how much I need, like, and who can I trust, all these sort of like very real, like super real kind of conversations. This is not the time to, for flowery kind of language of like
But
of possibilities and things like that. Like, no, like you have to be real.
um, and also, dude, focus on the positive. Okay, so yeah,
Oh no, this
that
is going to
relationship
lead positive.
cut
No,
him
I mean,
off.
no, this is very positive because
Okay,
you have to really set your boundaries and understand your limitations. This is not a negative thing in the cosmology, the Tongshu. This is an expression of your dignity.
Mhm,
To be able to say, I can't afford you, or like, maybe in the spring. Like this is
mhm.
a realistic understanding of our resources and capacities. This is what irritates me so much about Western culture because anytime you do that, you're seen as negative. And
No,
that's
but
like,
I'm
no,
I'm I'm asking you.
you're just delusional.
I'm
Like that.
asking you to tell people what do they do with their good relationships right now?
I know. Oh, well, of course, value them, of
Yeah,
course, bring them in close. And this is,
yeah,
and I'm not saying about you, this is just a theme that's
I know,
in the
I know.
culture itself, right? So you might not have very good bedside manner, but you're right, when you admit those things to yourself. All of this, the good relationships that you value and you treasure and all the ones that are challenging and that you need to edit in some way are all part of a process of bringing our world in close. And this is the second aspect of the eighth moon, which is
Mm,
dignified. It's like
mm,
so it's not really about it can be some diplomacy, but it's really about bringing your practice in close and understanding like what's of value to you, like for real, like be real, like be emotional. Like we always think about roosters as like cold and calculating and not very emotional, but the eighth moon itself is incredibly emotional. It should be poetic. It should be moving because what we're doing is reclaiming our inspiration. There's a parallel between, spring and autumn. And spring is like, oh, I'm inspired to move outward, right? And go from being to doing, right? My being feels inspired to do, right? So
mm.
think about it reversing direction. Now that I'm editing out doing, I'm gathering my inspiration back to my being. What is that? Who am I in this space? Like to really kind of go back into that again inward space, this gathering inward of like of is a reclamation of our inspiration. When you say inspiration to Americans, they think it's automatically about like how much you were able to accomplish, and that's actually inspiration is much more complex and much more subtle, in our experience. So that subtlety is something that in the eighth moon on a cultural level, like with the moon festival, they would have the literati, like of course it's the classist kind of thing, but like they would have the literati and boats, like basically uh dictating poetry to one another because they're trying to evoke a sort of emotional response based on like the simplest things that you could say. So it's like a really intimate time, so it's also the case with the people we love. Like how many can you can you bring gestures forward that show your appreciation of the people that you live with, you care about? Or what is the smallest possible thing you could say to someone to really express how you feel about it? Like how poetic can you be with the people in your life? And that's really a profound suggestion, and that can only be considered when you've stopped pushing your chi outward, like when you actually allowed yourself to relax and gather inward and rest,
And
in
and
whatever that moves you.
and that brings us to today's sponsor, the Shane Company. I'm just kidding.
Exactly. Yeah. But there's a harmony that's really available when you're talking about the eighth moon. It's like harmonizing excess. It's a process, I'm not
Mhm,
saying like tomorrow you should be able to be for this, but understand that like we're headed to the ninth moon, which is the dog moon, which is where you recommit your loyalties, right? So you have to tease out what your loyalties actually mean, and that's
mhm.
and that's really what the eighth moon is about. in particular, in this wood snake year, I think that there's a great capacity here for um, uh, understanding oneself in like a particularly potent way. Understand the biases that we operate with. There's nothing wrong with bias. You know, I'd rather treat people well than treat people poorly. That's a
Mhm.
bias. Yeah.
Mhm.
So like it's not so like kind of understanding where our biases come from, why we are the way we are, in life,
Mhm.
like where we come from, who we're indebted to, like who, we still want to give back to. So I mean, this is not easy conversations for Americans to have necessarily because we're kind of constantly pushing outward and trying to achieve in this sort of self-centered, self-interested kind of way. But I think that there's an opportunity in this moon just naturally, if and it doesn't require anything. Like clarity is not something you achieve, it's something you find just by relaxing.
Mhm.
That's a really interesting thing. We have to use yin power. Yin power is not trying, yin power is like relaxing and allowing what is self-evident to kind of come forward.
I mean, you're talking about loyalty and all this stuff. I mean, it's like technically editing is the ultimate expression of loyalty because then you're literally just saying, this is the stuff I'm keeping and this is the stuff that I'm letting go away.
100%,
And that's
100%.
all that's
Yeah.
all it
And
is.
we're going to be doing that regardless, like you're going to express your prejudice, and part of that is to, this shining a light inward, and like and not thinking, expressing our value and balancing and harmonizing our external condition is necessarily a part of what's happening inside, right? And so we're developing a depth of experience by bringing our situation in close, by not externalizing, right? Like what
Mhm.
our value is. Like we're not worried about what our priest is saying, right? Or what I'm saying. Like you find it in your own experience. And when you find it in your own experience, you're basically developing a depth of experience that is going to bloom. It's going to
Mhm.
blossom throughout the winter because that's the place we're going. So in especially in the autumn equinox, we really want to meet, we want to greet and welcome yin, by actually paying attention into our own experience and bringing our practices in close, like your meaning and value, like all of these things, purpose, but more softer, like if you have a purpose for something, why? Like do the why questions, break it down so you can get to something simple, like in that simple experience as sort of a root condition. That's where you have the opportunity to develop a depth of experience. And so yang is considered this kind of what we want to store from yang is something sort of purified and crystalline, just like this inspiration for action has to be sort of washed and cleaned of desire, right? So we're taking this sort of red object or a crystal and we're clearing it of impurities so that we have like a sort of a quintessential essence of like what moves us, that experience of being moved. Like, why do I choose this kind of popcorn over that? Or, less about preferences and more about like just what moves you, what truly moves you as an individual or in your experience, less about a self, right? Just in your experience, how are you moved? And that essence of being moved, just being moved, no content, just the essence of being moved is what we're looking to store of yang, in the winter. And that's the thing that in the depth of darkness, you're keeping that little ember bright. That's what that is. That's not desire. It's the human experience of being moved because we're surrounded by inhibition, at that time. So there's no movement, but you really want to keep that capacity for movement alive. It's very important, through the winter. But if it's exaggerated and you're feeding it so much and you're just storing nothing but desire, then you're not really able to come in close, to what your own
Mhm.
experience is. And that's a very strenuous thing to maintain. So we sort of shorten our lives. So in a way, this is a conservation of effort, right? This is going on sleep mode, right? So we're saving our energy. So there's a practical end to it, but then there's also kind of a metaphysical end to it, or like a cosmological end to it, where we can really have this sort of graceful experience of our lives. So that's where there's this binary bit of like really being, ruthless in our calculations. But the reason why we're doing it is not because we're selfish necessarily, but because we're like, we really want to know why, why should I care? Tell me why should I care? And so those kinds of like really blunt, kinds of assessments, very available this moon. And so if you're not really tapping into this, bringing yourself in close, and you're only expressing your like ego and your selfishness, then this moon, there's a chance for you to like really mess up your friendships.
Yeah, there's a the editing process. It's interesting because I mean, there's been a lot of loss in my life over the past month or whatever. And but it's kind of life editing for us in many ways, right?
Mhm.
Um, but when we say this stuff, when we go why, it's one of the just the rule of thumb is change yourself, not the world. I talk about this with health. Like all these other things can happen when you're healthy, but for some reason we have bigger reasons. We need a bigger reason, bigger than ourselves. And it's like, no, when you're the
Yeah.
vehicle and you actually
Right.
go in and you actually take care of
Right.
yourself, you're always available to do bigger and better things, right? So
Right.
that's
Right.
that's the idea. So it's kind of like, you know, most people won't choose caring for themselves. They'll choose caring for someone else, right?
Hmm.
They'll always outsource it. So this is a good time to just know
Hmm.
that if you want to care for someone else, and I'm guilty of this too, like
Hmm.
I've always shown my energy towards other things. Um,
Hmm.
but make sure that at least the first act of the day and the last act of the day is to yourself, to where at least you
Hmm.
remember you're still there. I would just
Hmm.
say that if you're trying to change the world or you're focused on things outside, um, have fun.
Yeah.
It ain't gonna end well.
The other thing I would add, in talking about the rooster moon, which is the
Hmm.
eighth moon, is that it's a wood element. Now, wood is counter to the metal element. So this is the eighth moon in general is where things become really, really sharp, really,
Hmm.
really sharp. So we want to make fine distinctions about our relationships, in the cost benefit analysis, and engaging these sorts of questions of the sort of source of our inspiration or the basis or the biases that we're working with. And it's fine to like question your own assumptions. It's a very good time because it's sharp and wood is this kind of like idealistic. There's a greater chance for this kind of argument, kind of spontaneous levels of argument, which I think
Hmm.
would be really interesting if we have this. It's okay, so for people who might know, it's a very tantra, kind of moon. Given that you have this wood snake along with this wood element rooster, this kind of spontaneous Satori kind of questioning, may expose like very uncomfortable aspects of our relationships with other people, but then also might lead to this kind of like spontaneous Satori kind of clarity or revelation at the same time. Um, you know, do I recommend going out to seek that? Only if you have like good containment, only if you
Yeah.
have good boundaries, around those sorts of things. And if you have a good base, in your practice, because there are plenty of people who will go seek kind of revelatory experiences, of course. But in this moon, even though they might be particularly potent, if they don't have a good base or a good container, you won't get a lot of harvest. You won't
Hmm.
get the harvest you think. So there could be some forgetfulness that comes with it, where you're just sort of then outsourcing once again, right? So I guess our base would be how close in are you to your own practices and experiences? How close do you hold it? Are you looking outward for approval? Are you measuring yourself and comparing things to other people? That would be another thing. Or are you, thinking that there is, speaking as a kind of from a Buddhist perspective, do you think there's a world out there that's trying to get you? Like,
Hmm.
or how much as it is, your own engagement, with your surroundings? Because in the Chinese worldview, there is an inner and an outer, kind of ecosystem. And right now, the whole point of talking about the moons or the chi nodes or anything is that how do we synchronize these two things, like what is being offered by the outside world and how can we make ourselves available to it. And the only reason why we would do that from this cosmology standpoint is for longevity. But longevity doesn't mean like I'm going to live till I'm 95. Longevity just means that I'm actually available for everything that I'm here to do, right? And so that I can be finished at the time of my passing rather than kind of still grasping for things,
Mhm.
right? So this is an editing time, which means that we should have a pretty full picture of everything that we've kind of gathered close to us. And in this particular moon, we can be blunt, like we can, chop things up and like look at how things relate to one another. And so we can take a holistic view and, depending on the chi character, bigger view, kind of come down narrow, but like really explore the dynamics between all the different complexities around us. And the recommendation would be to simplify as much as possible. Um, and in that respect, I think you can do that really well, and it can be a very illuminating time. I'm talking really illuminating if you have good base.
Might
What
start
do you got
raining on
going
me
on?
here in a second. Which, by the way, internet, I'm on the East Coast and in the South right now, and I sit on the porch at night. You want to know why? Because there's fireflies.
Oh, I miss fireflies.
I'm, come on,
They're the
it
best.
just hanging out, writing poems,
Yeah.
look like
Oh,
tea and fireflies
it's like Lantern Festival. Yeah.
is,
It's
come on,
it's
man.
you're getting a nature's lantern festival as the
Mhm.
firefly.
Yeah, yeah. It is. I mean, I was out here right when I landed, and I'm out in the beautiful like autumn night, in the South, and all of a sudden just a little, and I was just like,
Wow.
oh, it's the best.
Yeah.
All right, so let's do the things.
So the when we're talking about the trines, who does well, in this kind of editing space, right? And there are four trines that we'll talk about, and we'll talk about the individual ones, but what I'm trying to do, I want to trying something different in that I want
Mhm.
to use a kind of keyword or a key phrase for each of the trines so that there's a
Cool.
general understanding of like and then within the individual trines, there can be some discussion. And it's not to say that any of the keywords are inapplicable to the other trines. All of the keywords are applicable to all of the trines, right? But it's just that the chosen keywords are kind of in the wheelhouse of that particular trine. So when I say the
Okay.
domestics, which include bunnies, rabbits, pigs, and goats, when I say that those in this rooster eighth moon, should focus on setting boundaries, and that's your key phrase for this particular moon. That doesn't mean that the other trines don't set boundaries. They also set boundaries. It's just to say that for the domestics, the setting of boundaries is actually very crucial because they actually need some sort of help and reassurance as a matter of survival, getting through the winter. So they're going to need to team up so they get a head start, on the setting of boundaries business. So in the case of rabbits in particular, their setting of boundaries should be very, very clear. As of course, uh, roosters being the diametric of the rabbit, like you would tell a rabbit, like, yeah, you should run and hide, it's okay. Like you should go where you're wanted, clearly wanted and safe, and prioritize that kind of safety. Because there can be a lot of aggression in terms of all that blunt stuff that comes up with the rooster. All of that's like nails on a chalkboard to a rabbit. They're really not super comfortable with that experience. So there's a lot of great potential for miscommunication. So when you're bringing your own practice in close, like the simplification for you means safety, right? So That's the most important thing for rabbits. And in the pig's eyes, setting of boundaries would actually mean, don't take it personally. All of these things that are kind of being thrown about and the blunt sort of nature. A pig does well if they just sort of don't take it personally and don't get triggered or roped into somebody else's kind of process. Um, in this moon, this is the moon that pigs in this snake year are likely to feel very exposed. So it's very, your self-regulating capacities are going to be on full display, and so like the rabbit, the less exposure you have, the better. In the case of a goat, goat's a very interesting place to be, because they have enough diplomacy to take constructive criticism very well. But there's not enough flexibility in the situation. So I would say for goats, get your own experts. Therapy is a great place to be. Or just like if you find this kind of edgy dynamic kind of coming at you, you can outsource a little bit, and get go to elders or experts to sort of get a sense of perspective on the situation. Goats do very well in sort of teaming up during this time. Going to experts is
Mm,
really what I should say, less than teaming
mm,
up. Um, so the ones that do generally do the best are the fixed. The fixed trine is really about what I would say, go with procedure, stay with procedure. And the fixed trine includes your snakes, your roosters, and your oxen. Out of the three, the ox do very well, but you wouldn't even notice it. They're just going to be sailing along for the most part, because they weather criticism like nobody else. Like they have very strong skin, they can take it. Don't worry too much about trying to make sense of it. But you probably won't anyway. I would just say kind of keep on keeping on, be
mm,
consistent, follow procedure. And then that way you might avoid some of the criticism, or it might come in different ways, but it might kind of come up alongside, right? Um, and oxen aren't necessarily, they already know where their essential priorities are. So they're already in the barn at this time. Because remember, autumn is a period of lots of activity and rest, lots of activity and rest, and that will be this moon. And then we're going toward less and less activity, more and more rest, right? So that's the direction that we're headed. The oxen don't overdo it, but they're going to be pretty active. And then the snakes can also be incredibly active. But the interesting thing about snakes, you would think that they're not interested in procedure, but they really are, because that's actually, if you give a snake a map, they'll know how to get around things. But if it's just a wide open situation, they could get sides, sort of there could be a kind of a sidewinding thing that would catch them off guard. That was the case in this seventh moon. For snakes, it wasn't as comfortable, but in this moon they'll be much more comfortable because they can kind of work around the procedures. So embrace the
mm,
procedure as something that you can then work around, right? Rather than, it's not about following, it's about working around the rules, right? Um, and then your active trine, which happens to be your horse, your dogs, and sorry, the tiger, right? So the phrase here would be, for those three, would be to get permission first. Um, don't mess around and don't make assumptions this moon, because I'm not worried about tigers for other people, but if somebody comes at a tiger in this moon, they could get more than they bargained for. It's like they're still following up off the monkey, so tigers could be really easily triggered this moon, even more than last moon. So
mm.
it's better for you and for me if the tigers, get permission first before they do something, spontaneous, right? You want them to kind of understand the rules of the game. To get a clarity of task, is a big difference between a minor setback and a major, diversion, right? And that would be, the caution for the horse is it, get a clarity of task. all the active signs like your tiger, your horse, the ox, even the dog, they're going to be busy, busy harvest, and then make sure that you get that rest at the same time. So that's another thing for tigers as well. Embrace more and more of your black stripe. Take longer naps, get up later, like take care of yourself in that way. Um, so horse, clarity of task, and then that goes into similar things with the dog, clarity of task, understanding what you're doing before you do it. Very good idea. And that goes along in mirroring with the domestics and setting boundaries, like having clear boundaries. And then the last trine, which is the adaption trine, which includes your dragons, your monkeys, and your rats. They're really good right now in this particular moon for being an advisor. So you're advising, even the rats can advise in the rooster moon, because there's a kind of chance that roosters kind of get caught up in the details, and a rat can actually be present for that and then provide a simple route to, at least temporarily resolve tension, right? So a rat can actually is a good ground. Both the rat and the ox are good grounding for anybody who's sort of spun out in their head. Those two would be a good people to talk to and to have as advisors. But that's also true of monkeys. To both the monkey and the dragon to some extent, or both of them in the same kind of category here, in the sense that they see more bigger picture, right? So they're able to, like, I understand what I can sympathize with all these particular complexities you're working through, but let's look at it from a bigger vantage point, right? So dragons and monkeys have different motives and how they navigate or provide that kind of larger perspective, but they can do it. And so
Mm.
for other people, having a dragon or a monkey around is not a bad idea, in terms of like having a greater sense of perspective, because we can sort of get caught up in our own mind about like the importance of any particular detail.
Yeah.
And a dragon, especially like a fire dragon, is going to be like, doesn't matter. Which, a dragon's going to have to expect that nobody wants to hear that. Um, but they're a very powerful kind of uh, higher perspective, a bigger, broader perspective that's available as everybody sort of assesses out all these details. Um, and that kind of thing can be helpful. That vantage point can be helpful in going from complexity to simplicity, because to be frank, it's not like you're going to figure it all out. No chance. That's not really what we're talking about here. The invitation isn't to completely sort out your entire life. Like, no, no, we're just dealing with like one small part, of this particular, whatever it is that's coming up in your own experience. And that may sort out this moon. That may be the invitation to something to sort out through the winter. It may be a kind of a many lifetimes kind of conversation. That's where this notion of biases, like what your bias is, this is not a temporary phenomenon. This has been around for a while, and it's taken a lot of different shapes and sizes, probably based on one's fate or life experiences. So having a dragon around, can actually help shine a light on that. Well, you've always been this way. Like, why would you want
Mhm.
to change now? And then you got to bring it in even closer to understand,
Mhm.
like, why am I interested in the change, right? So yeah.
Mm. Thank you. Okay, so the first one's boundaries. The second group is what? What's their word?
Procedure.
Procedure. The third,
Yeah, procedure. Permission.
permission, and then
And
the
then the adaption is advising.
advising.
Cheers.
Nothing like some keywords, man.
Keywords. It's all about the keywords right now. That's what I'm, because it can get,
Yeah.
again, going from complexity to simplicity. Like,
Hmm.
if you have both of those things, you can move back and forth in terms of the information and go back to the sort of simple understandings and then expand and then come back again. It's an amazing and powerful rhetorical device that's been used in the wisdom tradition since the beginning, you know.
Mm.
So
Oh, I like that. Thank you. And everyone, if y'all want to go on the site and go to the contact page, just send me an email just saying, or like comment or whatever, like I would like to join
Oh
a
yeah.
Zoom call.
Yeah.
It's a slow burn, but it's just about like engaging with this work.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much of our life allows us to be voyeurs, just peeking in the window of everything and not doing
Sure.
anything. And as I've been working with a lot of folks, again, I was at a thing where I saw people, they learned more in one day than I've ever known my entire life. And I was like, oh, y'all don't know anything. You'll
Mhm.
never be able to integrate that. Your brain, I mean, you know everything.
Right. Right.
But who cares if you can't get it into the body, man, if you can't get it into your life.
Well,
And so
it's the Buddha's three cups, right?
yeah.
It's the three cup phenomenon. So one
Yeah.
is like a person who already knows and they've got the
Hmm.
lid on top, and then
Hmm.
the bottom is that there's no containment, and
Hmm.
so like a lot of people have the bottomless,
Yeah.
so there's no containment for what you bring in. It's like come and
Yeah.
gone.
Yeah, and we just
Yeah.
hoard information. It's if you can, it's like my work is always to zoom out and let you know, like, I know you've learned all these different things, but I want to show you that they're kind of all similar in this way, so you can again edit all of the names and words and stuff, and just know that your arm does this, man.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's what your arm
So
does.
yeah, this is such a really amazing conversation that I know that goes well off what we're trying to close out here. But
Hmm.
just thinking about, like, Ming referred to that as the sort of eclecticism of our
Hmm.
culture, that we're sort of like collecting different things from different places in it with
Yeah.
this notion that we can somehow integrate them all. And I mean, I was guilty, 100% guilty of that,
Hmm.
and I had my own journey with that where I was like, oh, all these are the things, like they're great, but like I am well, from a fate perspective, from a dharma, like karma sort of understanding, is that I'm just putting more things on myself to resolve. Like
Yeah.
I don't, it's like, well, I'm learning piano, but I'm trying to also, learn all these other things as well. But we have this really interesting thing um, in Western culture where we think it's very important for us to pursue every possible thing that we could ever be interested in. And I think there's a kind of maturity that happens when you're like, no, actually, no, I can let that go. I
Yeah.
don't, it's nice to go watch that. That's super cool to witness, but I don't need to be a violinist, like,
Mhm.
and not everything here is for me to do, or to be.
That's a mindset thing that I work with people on. I'm like, learn to zoom out and see the intention of the thing. So like when I was with arts organizations, they're like, everyone should dance. I'm like, no, it'd be nice that everyone found the thing that like to show up and be creative with. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? It's like
Yeah.
zoom out and just know that maybe not everyone needs to Kevin Bacon their way through life in a barn whenever, life gets hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That
and
we
that's
can
a
do that.
lot about what this moon is all about. Like
Mhm.
if you look at the eighth moon, it's like middle age, it's like the
Mhm.
middle age period of the year where you're just
Mhm.
like, I only have so much time.
Yeah.
What do I really care about? Like
Yeah.
all these other, everything else, like I can let go, but what I actually really need. And like
Mhm.
that's both requires like keen observation and a ruthless willingness to let go of what you don't need, even though if you like it, right?
Mhm.
And then also the deep appreciation for that kind of gracefulness and dignity, to embrace the things that you really do need, right?
Mhm.
So that's very much the eighth moon, this kind of yin and yang of the moon itself.
Mhm. Thank you.
Thank
Call
you,
you in a little
Matt.
bit.
Okay, bye.